my question was the price of the Milonga in DC weekday and weekend, did the prices go up more than inflation? I was the person that danced 6 or 7 nights a week and took private lessons and went to classes and bought the shoes and bought the clothes.
It's not that the pie is getting smaller. We just gotta get more.
We need more pies. More pies. Yes.
We are ready to go. Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. What are we talking about today?
Oh, today is exciting. Oh, today's going to be a little salacious, maybe. We'll see. We'll see.
Well, it's important. I think
we've
talked about this before to some degree. In a prior episode, we talked about how much a milonga costs, what an organizer goes through to, how their calculations come together to make the price. Yeah. But we haven't really talked about how that impacts the community.
Yep, the price of tango. But milongas specifically.
Yes, specifically milongas.
Yeah.
And whether or not we are driving people away, are we excluding people from the beginning? Should we lower prices? Is it too much?
Does the price impact the community?
And is what we're offering for the price worth what's being offered?
Yes. Yeah.
So lots of things to unpack.
Okay, so before we dive into the conversation, I think there's a couple things. We did a bit of research, right? So we were researching the price of the milongas,
how it varies across the U.S. and Europe.
And Asia. We talked a little bit. We got a little bit of data about Asia. We did a little bit of research about like how it relates to wages in the areas,
the local economy, cost of living.
Yes, and I did a tiny bit of research about how the prices of at least our local milongas in DC pre-COVID versus post-COVID.
What did you find out?
Okay, so it's interesting because I guess I felt like the price went up after COVID, and I think it went up everywhere, right? Inflation went up. So my question was the price of the milonga in DC weekday and weekend, did the prices go up more than inflation? And sometimes it did. Sometimes it did. Now, if
Can you throw some numbers out there for a moment?
Sure.
Okay. So we're talking
it used to be, it used to be like 10 to 12 weekday.
Oh, for milonga. Whoa. I don't remember those prices.
Yep. And it was it $16, $17? Always a strange number at Eastern Market specifically. So Eastern Market doesn't really exist right now.
It was 17.
It was 17.
And just to be clear, we're talking about bare bones milonga.
Yeah.
Meaning it's just the DJ, it's just the dancing, nothing special,
some snacks.
Maybe some light snacks. We're not talking about like heavy cook serve food. We're not talking about special classes, no combination with the class at milonga, no teachers, just
and let's add, even if there was a performance, it still costs the same. It was still $17 at Eastern Market. So, and it was usually $15 for the others. So Eastern Market was always just a couple dollars more. Okay. So when you run those through and you compare pre-COVID prices to post-COVID, now granted, prices didn't really change for the 5 years before COVID. It was about the same. Nobody really adjusted. So if you're saying like, okay, are we looking at 2013 versus 2024? That's a different calculation. But generally, the weekday milongas, the prices have increased more than inflation.
Wow.
Weekend milongas, as long as we're talking about a $20 milonga, it's still in line. So it was, if we were, let's say if Eastern Market still was happening and it was $20 entry, that would be in line with inflation.
Yeah.
But if we talk about a $25 milonga, that's more.
But these
than
are weekend milongas now. Like
these are weekend
milongas. That would be
the weekday milongas. The prices have increased more than inflation.
Yeah.
Pre and post COVID. Now, like so we talked a little bit. It's expensive to run a milonga if you are bringing tables and tablecloths, and if you're renting a space and you're doing all of the stuff yourself,
hiring a DJ and DJing
yourself. And we don't know what any other organizers what their relationships with the locations look like. So we can only really talk about our experience, and we started this post-COVID. But as a consumer, the prices have increased more. Yeah. Now, have commercial rents increased more? Like, I know that calculation, commercial rents are insane. Even when there was a bunch of office space open, prices still increased, right? The cost of all of these spaces still increased. So, but it is an interesting calculation that it's increased more. And we know statistically in the US, the power of your wages has decreased.
Yeah.
So it's the prices have increased and also our dollars go
For less.
for less and our time at work is
Right.
for less.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the groundwork that we're coming from. Now, do you want to talk about like what we found?
Yeah, it was actually really interesting. And so
It's
I think we found that in large cities like in the US, like New York, DC, San Francisco, Houston, interestingly not LA, that although the prices were typically higher, $20 to $25,
Or
they
30.
were or 30, yes. They were at the time, I didn't split the difference between the time, but they were comparable to how much people were getting paid, people's wages and the cost of living in those cities. But you would have very large cities in Europe, your Paris, and even in Asia, your Seoul, your London, where those prices were actually cheaper than the
Yeah.
cost of living.
Yeah, especially across Europe and Asia.
Yes.
There are a lot
So
of
it's like, how are they
places.
able to afford cheaper events? And I think there was some mention about maybe more events being subsidized or
Yeah. They may have larger populations as well. It's a different thing if you
right,
have
high
100
volume.
people
Yep.
versus 30 people.
Yes.
That's
yes,
going to
those are
change your
huge
calculation.
helps.
Yeah. And of course, like,
And there's also, as even like in DC, we have every night several events. But in huge cities in Europe and Asia, they have like 20 events per week. And so they really can't even go that much higher in price, right? Just because there's so many.
there's too much competition.
There's too much competition.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I find too, when you dance in these other places with larger cities, tango does seem to be more accessible. And maybe, I mean, we're a capitalist society here. It's about making money. We don't have socialized healthcare.
Right.
We don't have other pieces of our lives that are socialized. So like even though maybe on paper we might appear to earn more, we're spending far more
Yeah.
for everything else.
That's also true.
Yeah.
This is interesting because what I didn't mention was this was assuming a median salary of, let's say, 80K, right, a year. And that's already excluding a huge number of people who
Yes.
could be interested in coming into tango. And so while I may say it's comparable to your local wages and such, but it's not really if you're looking at
Yes.
anybody less than that,
Yeah.
right? And it's hard because I feel like because I don't know, I feel like in other countries, tango, the vast majority of tango dancers are more art related folks. Maybe they're more like their careers, their personal lives and their professional lives are more on like the artistic side. In the US, it feels like there's a lot more professionals, which is probably why we
Yeah.
can and still continue to
Yeah.
charge the
A
prices.
lot of engineers.
A lot of engineers and scientists.
Doctors, lawyers. Yes. Yeah. It's people that, well, and having like, I was the person that danced 6 or 7 nights a week and took private lessons and went to classes and bought the shoes and bought the clothes. That was a lot of money. That was a lot of money. And it was just that I was fortunate, right?
Yeah.
I like if I had been if I had been a waitress, if I made $200 in an evening, like there's no way
Right.
I would have been spending what if you dance every night, what's the calculation here?
I think we calculate like if you went out one night a week for like a big milonga, and let's say you did one other class / practica, it's like almost $50 a week.
Yes.
Every week. And that's not what we do. We go out several times. We want to support the community, but it becomes hard.
Yep.
And like I think you were the one you said before, like tango is not, at least within cities and communities, it's not a vacuum. It's not one singular event. There's 5 events, and we want
Yes.
people
to be able to go to multiple events. So like let's say we want people to if they want to dance 3 times in a weekend, they could dance. So if it's $20 at the door, that's $60. That's not with education. That's not the shoes that they're wearing that are wearing out. And then let's say you have 2 people in that relationship. That's $120.
from the same household. Let's not even talk about that.
I mean, so and what if they're parents?
Yes.
And they're paying like a going rate for a babysitter
you have
right
to
now
pay-
is
yes.
$25 an hour. So at some point,
And you're going for a 3-4 hour milonga.
yes. So and you don't know, let's say that there's the milongas now are as we say they are, people are picking and choosing where they're dancing, then you don't know if it's going to even be a good night for you. You don't know if your friends are going to be there. At some point, it really does become cost prohibitive. Do we want a community where people have access to dancing multiple places, multiple nights a week? Because keep in mind, if people can go out, let's say 3 to 5 times a week if they want to, then that community matures and grows faster.
I think the question is not do we, because I think everybody would say yes. I think the question is how do we have such a community?
Yes.
But before we keep going, Jon, what are your thoughts on this? Is there anything that you've experienced that
Yeah, especially coming from small town.
Ooh, yes.
Right?
Ithaca, right?
What was this like? Yeah, Ithaca.
So first of all, I'm glad you brought up the children aspect of it, because I think, like, for us specifically, when we went out dancing, it was very much we got to think about childcare, and that was a big part of the cost benefit that we had to think about. From a small town, I mean, it was very cheap. We went to, so when I started dancing and went to Milongas, it was kind of the honor system that we went. There was like a jar sat out, and then you put
like Pablo's.
Oh yeah, that's true. They still do that actually.
Yeah, and I think when I first started, it was like $5. You put like $5 in the jar for a we had
for a weeknight Milonga.
So we had it was, so again, it was small town. So our practicas were free. First of all, so we had a practica a week. It was free. We had
but in a free space. No,
in a free space. It was a free space. The DJ was a volunteer, so there was no cost associated, but definitely a lot of donated resources for the sake of the community. Because I mean, I ran that practica for a long time, and there was definitely a lot of last minute running around. Sometimes the space fell through, running around trying to find a replacement. We also had a Milonga a week. That was kind of little small, like cozy little Milonga, and that was the sort of you donate $5 into a little jar kind of a situation. And then we had a special Saturday Milonga once a month, and that was $10. And that was that you had snacks and all that stuff. So yeah, no, it was very different.
But wait, do you have any concept of what that's like right now?
So
the practica still happens, I hear.
The practica still happens. It's still free. As far as the Milongas, I'm inclined to think that it's still, like, I vaguely remember that it's still $10. So we're thinking of going to
Ithaca Tango Weekend.
Ithaca Tango Weekend. That's the end of July. And that's going to be sort of a more special event. I think they are getting DJs to come in for that. And my understanding is that it's going to be $20 to $25 per Milonga, and it's like 3 Milongas. I mean, that makes sense to me because they're getting people presumably out of town to come and DJ, and there's going to be some other costs and snacks and things like that.
It makes me think, though, that's more of like a college town, right?
It's very much a college town. It's 2 colleges.
So that's also a very different dynamic than being in like a metropolitan city or even a smaller suburban,
yeah,
smaller suburban type city that's not associated with a college, where you would expect working professionals to still be able to afford. So that's amazing, though.
Well, but here's the question. Is like, do we want a community where only working professionals can afford? Like, do we want people to be able to dance that are not earning 6 figures? I do. I think it enriches our community to be accessible to more people, right? But it's a rock and a hard place, right? Because there are costs associated with the events, unless we found donation events or unless there were nonprofits that could subsidize.
I was just about to say.
Yeah. So
So actually, I wanted to add one more thing, and I was thinking about this. So in Ithaca, our practicas were on campus, on Cornell campus, so it was very walkable for any students who wanted to go. Our Milongas were not. But it was still a small town, and it was like a 5-minute drive to anywhere. And if you knew anybody, they could give you a ride. But in DC, if you wanted to go to a Milonga, especially if you don't have a car, you're a student or what have you, you're spending, I don't know how long on the metro, and that's an additional cost, or Uber or whatever it is, to get to the Milonga.
Yeah, that's true.
So it just becomes
Or if you drive and you have to pay for parking.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
parking
a big
or
parking.
gas.
I mean, like for 3 hours, some places in DC is $25.
Yeah.
So
I
that's
think it just happened recently.
the cost of the Milonga, right?
Right.
So then you have to double it.
And you also have, if you go out, if it's a weekend, maybe you're also going to have dinner.
Yeah.
You know, and it adds up so fast.
Adds up. Yeah.
Maybe you want to bring a bottle of wine so you can sit at the table with your friends and drink. That adds up.
Well,
Okay, so-
and I'll touch on that too, is like maybe you want to bring a bottle of wine, but like I know, I'll call it out, most organizers don't have liquor license, right? So like that's another consideration is like maybe you should bring it in your little thermos and nobody should know you're drinking wine because we don't need to get organizers in trouble. I'm not saying do that for a brazo, but I am saying like that is another expense that if an organizer wanted to have a liquor license just for a one-time event, that's more money that they have to pay, right?
Or, and here's the kicker, right? They don't need a liquor license if they partner with a bar. But the problem is then you need to support the bar, right? You need to come into the Milonga plus buy a drink, maybe even have dinner if it's a restaurant. And so it's like, it's give and take.
Yeah.
You know, it's such a challenging problem.
It is.
But I don't think it will ever get resolved if we don't talk about it.
Yes.
And so I think part of even just having this conversation now, I hope people do comment and share what
are their solutions.
Right. And it's not gonna be one solution, maybe not even one solution in a given city.
Yeah.
But maybe the more aware, the more intentional we become about it, the better we can think about, you know, for instance, to your point, John, right? You mentioned transportation. Maybe it's not like, hey, I can't change the price of my Milonga, but maybe I can help coordinate carpools or put out like a Facebook group. Yeah. Someone will create a Facebook group to help people to carpool from events. And so no matter where you're going, you just post in there and someone will be like, yep, I'm also going. Let's hitch a ride if we can. So it might help us think about more creative solutions that aren't necessarily monetary either, to still build a community feeling.
Yeah.
It actually had me thinking. I know we're already going to solutioning. I don't know if we're done asking the question yet of the impact on the community, but you know, I think part of the challenge is, so we talk about this a lot, right? Like tango is our second job, right? We're fortunate enough to have another job that sustains us.
Yes.
But there are others who do this for a living and it's their profession.
Yeah.
And so their cost analysis is very different from ours.
Because they need to make a living.
They need to actually make it live, right? It's not enough to make or slightly profit. They need to really profit and not just like barely survive. Yeah. So I wonder if there's a way, if we can get more volunteers in the community trained to do things to help offset costs. So like getting more volunteer DJs, right? Like this works really well at Pablo's. Yeah. It's a volunteer DJ basis. So you have more people to kind of like spread some of the financial burden. Yeah. Maybe it's getting more, so that way, at least then the things that the groups of people who really, so like the teachers, for instance, who you really do need to pay can get paid, and you don't, as an organizer, have to like cut off your donate a kidney to make it work.
Yeah. Well, and I think I don't want to not give credit where credit is due, especially here that we have Pablo's and that it is an honor system. It's $5, right? And they have scholarships to help people that need it. And I hope people like fully, like, I don't put my name in those scholarships because we will pay for the workshops, right? And we pay the $5.
But you can recommend someone.
You can recommend someone, absolutely. We have the free library practica, right? All volunteer run that runs that, and that George Washington was free for a long time, and I think now they charge a nominal fee, right? So I think let's give credit that there are volunteer organizations, and Mercurio works on getting grants to try to make things accessible, like workshops and things like that, is my understanding,
and the Queer Collective as well. They offer a lot of, almost everything is free, I think, to make it more accessible.
Yes. So, and part of that, I think, is doing also work to get out there in the community and see who would support these endeavors, what resources are available. I know for us, we've had a very serious conversation about whether we change to nonprofit status and what that would look like so that we would have more resources available
to offset.
Offset, yeah.
Because when you really start adding up the numbers, then it's like, no, this event needs to be at least $25 to $30.
Yes.
But then, like, that's not possible. So then
Yeah.
we have to cut back on the experience or.
Well, and it's really hard when in any business, I think, like when you go into it, it's an abundance mindset or a scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
And a scarcity mindset is like, oh, I need to be the one place that people come and I need to charge a certain amount so I can make as much out of this one thing as possible. And an abundance mindset is like, no, I'm going to make it. There's abundance out here. We're not going to fight on this level. And it's that there are many pieces of this pie.
I was about to say.
Right. And it's
really not that the pie is getting smaller. We just got to get more.
We need more pies. More pies. Yes. So like, I think there's room for that. But I was thinking like, if there was, and I'm just daydreaming here.
Let's daydream.
If there was a local nonprofit whose job was to just grow and support the Argentine tango community, and by that to like find grant resources, to have specialized in it, to have charity events that could be sponsored, even to bring funds that are from outside of tango, but the only goal was to subsidize and make it more affordable, because the entire community, the teachers would benefit. The people coming at a lower price would be able to benefit. Like it could actually make it more accessible, right?
I think that would require organizers to really work together as a community, and that can be a bit tricky. I do think in DC we definitely do to some extent on the operational side of things. Like Milongas will pause if another group is doing something big for that time to help, push everybody, sometimes. I think we already, and I know there's already we have like an organizing group that Tango Mercurio and Jorg and Sarah has started to help bring all the organizers together. That's more about conversation about safety, right?
Yeah.
But financially, to kind of like what I'm thinking about is for us who are already hooked into tango, we're gonna cough up the funds. We already know what we're in for. We're gonna make it work.
Yeah.
But for the new people that are coming in, they haven't yet found the full value of tango, and so they're paying into a system that they haven't fully mentally bought into.
True.
Little pun there. And is there a way to, at least I'm also daydreaming, have a community-wide, let's say, pricing structure. So no matter where you go in the DC, DMV community, tango community, as a new person, maybe, I don't know, for 6 to 12 months or something, you're going to get a very accessible experience.
Yeah.
Again,
or a subscription, a local subscription that supports all of that you could go anywhere, you would be able to dance, you would have access, like ultimately access. And if such a thing did exist, then you could also apply for scholarships and you could be able to give on like a needed basis, right? Have a sliding scale for something like this. I mean, we can daydream. Everything starts somewhere.
What would need to be true for that to happen, like from an organizing perspective?
Tango mafia.
Who's gonna
like a charitable mafia?
It's like you have to buy into the association or something.
Something like, I mean, like realtors, like realtors. It's an association. There are benefits to being part of that association, but there's a shared standard, right? I don't know. Maybe it's not a bad idea. Maybe something's starting.
And there will still always be someone who wants to go off and do their own thing, and that's okay. But if at least more organizers than not were part of it, then there could be a nice, like, cohesive. Then I think we can act. Because the thing is, we talk about community building, but we really mean our own community building. We mean the Vienna Tango School community building. We mean whichever organizer's name, group, community building. But if we talked about
the entire community,
a regional community building, that's a real one. And that takes a lot more work.
Yeah. Well, and we're going to dive into what this tango community is and if it is a community.
Oh, we do have a topic on this coming up.
So, well, I'll throw it out there. Is it a community? Are these relationships real? We'll talk about that, but not today.
Today, I think. Did we get? Oh, we didn't get the time.
We're actually doing well. All right. So what we've said so far, like we've talked about the prices, how it is or isn't accessible, how we think we could support it, or what the balance is. I don't know that we really came to a solid conclusion. I think we need
to have more conversations.
More conversation. I think we need input. I think like really having more organizers weigh in, especially people that have been at it a long time, right?
Podcast.
Yeah. Maybe a panel of organizers.
Ooh.
There we go.
I love how we're literally designing these podcasts live.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. But like I really want to know, because like when we solicited, we saw, okay, so in Korea you could dance for the equivalent of $3. Turkey, you could dance for the equivalent of around $3 to $5. And like my understanding based on conversations is that people work a lot in these places.
Yeah.
Income is not that high. But we're also talking about places where like some of their costs are subsidized, right? Healthcare is subsidized. There's a social safety net that we don't really have here, right? So every dollar is really like a trade-off. And I'll be the grumpy old person, okay? $20 is a lot of money. It's a lot of money. $75 for 3 milongas in a weekend, that's a lot of money. So, you know, what else? We didn't touch on this actually. I'll throw this out there because in one conversation, one of the questions is like, what else can you do for $20? Right? There aren't that many activities. I don't think that is actually an argument for tango being accessible. I think that's an argument for third spaces in the U.S. community not existing, because you used to be able to go bowling for $5, right? Now going bowling is $100.
What?
Yeah. Well, maybe you can do it for 50 to 75. It's expensive. It's really expensive. Or an arcade. Like we don't have this kind of culture where there are places that you can go, and this is a detriment to our community.
Yeah.
It's not a benefit. So like, yes, there aren't that many things you could do for $20, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try to make it accessible.
Yeah.
Right? And if we're talking about like we want a community that has young people, older people, middle-aged people, which apparently I am. Like if we want to be accessible to people that have children or not, like then we have some serious considerations that we have to make.
Trade-offs.
Yeah.
But we might need to make some trade-offs to make it work.
So, by the way, I'm kind of curious what you guys think about this. So for example, for Abrazo, we have an early bird pricing where people show up early, they get it for cheaper. And then we also offer a cheaper price to students. What if we have these sort of incentives where if attendees do something, they'll get it for a cheaper price? And there are other things that they could do that, I mean, I might not be thinking of, like if I don't want to use the phrase taxi dancers, but I'm going to use the phrase taxi dancers. If they are more open about who they dance with, maybe like they get it for a cheaper price. So something like that kind of they decreases the price, promotes some kind of community interaction.
So I like this idea. We have to have a conversation on taxi dancing.
Okay.
Not today.
Yeah.
We'll have that conversation. So when we started the early bird,
you stopped me then because I was
well, the taxi dancing, that's a whole episode.
Taxi dancing, but now I get worried when we apply a monetary value to the dancing or the thing that you're doing. It's separate from taxi dancing, of course. That is a business. It's essentially like a class, let's say, that you sign up for throughout the Milonga, but I get worried.
No. But I think Jon probably means not taxi dancing where like you got a ticket, you exchange for a dance, but more that they're there and their job is if we see people sitting, we go and we're friendlier than we normally would be.
Right, but like to pay for that now, it's to add a monetary value to that. I don't know, something about that just feels like.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't want to use.
We would start to incentivize like something bad.
Okay, so we'll pin that. Let's pin that. We gotta talk about taxi dancing.
It's mostly I didn't. That's why I was hesitant to use the phrase.
But I see what you're saying. It's like essentially like playing like mini hosts to make sure that there's always someone around.
Well, but maybe that's it. Maybe we don't call it taxi dancing. Maybe we actually say hosting.
Yeah.
Like because a good host is going to recognize if there is an imbalance, and let's say you have a switch dancer, right? Like. Then if there are a bunch of follows sitting, then you're leading that night, right? If you have a bunch of leaders sitting, you're following that night. That is a good host, right? But I think specifically with early bird, the process was like, okay, let's see if people like it. If they show up, they're voting with their dollars. Absolutely, then we can play with it even more, right? But if you say, okay, we have an early bird and people aren't showing up for it, then it's like, okay, the dollars didn't matter that much. But that's not addressing the root cause of like, how are we generally making it overall more accessible? Like, I want college students to be able to dance. I want high school kids to be able to dance.
Well,
I want
in the same room.
well, no, I think it can. I think they can dance in the same room.
Okay, I'm thinking like late night milonga with adults.
Okay, sure.
Afternoon milongas, I think it's okay if it's like a family oriented type event. I just don't want to introduce children into that environment.
But I want retirees to be able to dance, and I want parents that are paying for babysitting to be able to dance, right? So, yeah.
You gonna do a part 2?
Part 2.
Let's do some homework. Let's poll some people. Let's see if we can get a panel of folks, whether it's live or not, to just kind of
so weigh in. Like, does cost stop you from dancing more? Do you think that there are people in your life that would benefit from tango that might not benefit because it's not accessible to them on a cost basis? And how could we fix it? How could we balance this?
And is there a readiness to maybe upgrade our tango culture so that we can make it more accessible?
Yes. Yeah. And if you have experience living in a community, probably a more international community, that it is more accessible, how are they doing it? What does this look like? Is it that they have donated spaces? Is it that the organizers, it's not what they're doing for a living? How is it existing that way? Yeah. All right. So part 2.
Part 2's coming up.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's wrap it up. Got it.
All right.
Good.
All right. We'll see you guys on the next one. Cheers. Ciao.
Thanks for tuning in to Staying Grounded. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and spread the word. We'll catch you next time.